Hello to each and every one of you for wherever you may be. Sorry, hiccups. It's Foxy speaking, and as many of you may know or may already be aware, I happily took a paid visit to the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum. And it was an enchanting little day out I had when visiting the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum itself. It was an enchanting day out, I must say. Wonderful day out, if anything, to so describe all that. And I, for one, will certainly want to go again. I had been before a long, long time ago as a little boy, so it was really the first time in what a very long time since I went. I mean, well, over a decade, well, taking into account my over 20-year age, I mean, because I'm 24 this year, as many of you may know. I mean, I don't know why I say I'm 24, because I'm not 24 yet. I'm still 23 at the moment, but I'm going to be 24. Well, I'm 24 in June of this year. I'm 25 next year, as you know. So, and I went as a little boy with my grandmother to Tangmere Military Aviation Museum once, and that's actually the second time I'd ever been. When I last went on Tuesday afternoon on the 4th of March 2025, and I needed something to cheer me up because my good friend, as we know, our good friend, because I know some of you followed him and looked up to him enormously greatly, as did I, the late Captain Graham the Baron Hesketh. That was the day he sadly died, the 4th of March 2025. Only aged 63, which is really no age at all. And I needed something, and going to the Tangmere Museum, Tangmere Military Aviation Museum, on that very date itself, was a welcome distraction from the grief on the saddening, regarding the saddening death of poor Graham, And I know it's a museum Graham would have wanted for me to visit, especially if it was on a day where I was feeling down in the dumps or just needed something to do, if there was, say, a weekend where there were no events or railways going ahead, and so on, and say, well, I could have pictured him saying, come along, old bean, since you've got no events to go to, why not take a paid visit to the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum? It'll give you something to do. It'll keep you away from boredom. And that, if he said something like that, he'd be very, very right. I know it's what he would have wanted for me when I went going to the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum. And I could actually, in my head, I could just hear him saying, well done, old bean. I hope you had a nice time visiting the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum. I literally heard that in my head when he said that. I could literally hear him saying that in my head, in his remembrance, that is. But moving on, Tangmere Military Aviation Museum, I would certainly recommend it to all Sussex residents, this very museum itself. Enchanting place to go to. I cannot begin to describe how enormously, wonderfully wholesome my experience was when I happily went. And astonish one as it might, one of the volunteers at the museum was impressively a 90-year-old man still volunteering at the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum. I met a 90-year-old volunteer, and he was astonishing. You'd never once believe he's 90. I mean, he was 90, perfect mobility, good posture, very upright. He wasn't frail or anything, sharp as a button, and very clear speech when talking to you. He spoke clearly, and if anything, he was briefly my tour guide of the museum at 90, and me, a mere 23, he gave me a little tour of a certain exhibited area of the museum at 90. I was impressed. It really did impress me. I said, you do not look 90. I said, had I not known how old... And when I said to the volunteer, I looked towards the volunteer after I heard how old he was, and I said, if I didn't know how old this man was, I would have thought he was about 73 or 74. But yeah, no, he really did look that good. He really, I never would have thought he was 80, if anything. Impressive man. I mean, before one asks, he looked much younger than what my Edmund, my wonderful late grandfather, looked like when he was 70. Because when my grandfather was 70, he looked older than what the Tangmere Museum volunteer looked like at 90 and looking about 70 or so. Whereas my grandfather, when he was 70, he looked about 83. You know, astonish one as it might, but there they are. No, it really impressed me that there was a 90-year-old volunteer still quite nimble and able to volunteer at the museum. He took great pride in volunteering at, so to speak. And he was a national service veteran, he was, because he did national service from back in the 1950s, you know. And what he looked like, he still had all of his hair at 90, he wasn't bald. Like me, he had a full head of hair, but grey, as you'd expect, glasses, a little beard. He didn't have a big beard, he had a small beard. It was nothing like it was different to Trevor's, but less of a beard than what Trevor Colt has. And a little taller than I. He was around about 5'8½", something like that. I imagine he was taller, because obviously older age you generally shrink. He was around about 5'8½". Couldn't have been anything lighter than 12 stones, something like that. He was a little heavier than I. He wasn't overweight, but he was sort of he wasn't skinny, he was a medium, not so solid, but sort of like a medium build, round about 12, just over 12 stone, I would assume, something like that. I never asked his weight. And very nice eyes, he had lovely eyes. I think they were blue, something like that, dazzling eyes. He had actually, if anything, he had dazzlingly lovely eyes, but kind eyes at the same time. His eyes represented warmth and kindness, if you looked directly into them. You know. But Tangmere Military Aviation Museum, sorry that was a bit irrelevant, but I just had to share this. I really, well and truly, had to share this with all of you. Tangmere Military Aviation Museum, the exhibits there are enormous. Not only are they extremely interesting, but they're fascinating to look at as a whole. Extremely fascinating as a whole. I mean, I'm definitely going to go back there again. If there's a weekend where there's no events going ahead, or a certain weekday where I've got nothing to do, during the month, because they're open from February to November every single year, and during that time, whenever I've got no events to attend, or a certain weekday when I've got nothing to do, I'm going to go there. I'm definitely going to go again. Unquestionably and undoubtedly, I'm going to go again, and I am certainly not kidding you. I'm certainly not kidding you there. I'm certainly not joking. I'm indeed going to go again. I love these museums, I really do. I might be in my 20s, but I love these museums, I really do. Especially when they represent something wholesome. Both interesting and educational, but wholesome at the same time. I love those types of museums. And they do prove useful, not only for us lot, but for children, for future generations of young children, what have you. But what's really surprises me most about Tangmere Military Aviation Museum is that it's not an international point of interest for tourists. That's what really surprises me most. But in the future, if anybody could make it happen that the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum become a popular international point of interest for tourists, international tourists, all around the comprised entirety of the global planet of Earth, it would certainly make a huge showcased difference. It would certainly help for the popularity of the Tangmere Museum itself. I've certainly got to say. Indeed so. Especially if it's in the spring and summer months. Tourists in the spring and summer months who come from the international part of the world, hopefully they can make it happen that Tangmere Aviation Military Museum will become an international point of interest for tourists. I'm certainly hoping so, fingers crossed it will happen in the future. These museums deserve popularity, more so than what they currently receive in our current timing of today. And I do believe we should have a better appreciation for history museums as a whole. I certainly would say that. But thank you all most sincerely, kindly for watching, and this, as a whole, is the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum Imagery Picture View Slideshow video. It's an imagery slideshow video, and certainly without further ado, let's see this very video itself rolling into action. Just to let each and every one of you know, they are opened annually, but they only open, generally speaking, from the beginning of February until the very tail end of November annually. That's my concluded belief. Because this year they just started opening up for their 2025 season from the 1st of February, and they're going to remain open until the 30th of November of this year. That's what I found out from their website. But they close at an earlier time in February and November, but from March to October they close at a later time, which I thought I might tell you. But it's a place one could really just spend hours there. I could just spend hours there. I could probably even spend a lunch time there, if anything. Have a good look round, have lunch, and look round again. No, I could really spend hours in this museum. I could truly spend hours at Tangmere Military Aviation Museum in the same way I could spend hours at, Amberley Museum or, what else is there I'm thinking of? Oh, yes. Fishbourne Roman Palace. I could spend hours there. And there are a few other museums I'm hoping to visit at some point this year in 2025. I'm seriously hoping so. I mean, because at some point this year I'm going to try and visit the Natural History Museum in London. And once again, probably the Science Museum. Having not been to the Natural History Museum and Science Museum for about over a decade or so. And or certain other museums in London. I've just got to see. I've got to see. Obviously, it's independent of certain circumstances, and of course, it's not happening on an event-attending weekend, you know. The same could certainly be said for the Tangmere Military Aviation Museum as a whole. But thank you most sincerely, kindly, for watching this Imagery Slideshow video featuring the Tangmere Aviation Museum itself. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. For those of you who are UK residents, the website link will be found in the description below. I think it's restricted for people in the international part of the world, because I think it's only accessible in the UK neck of the woods. I don't understand why. It should be accessible internationally, the website, not just domestically, but there's nothing one could do on that. Thank you most sincerely, kindly for watching. Good night, and may your God go with you. Goodbye, and may happiness be knocking kindly on your doorstep. Tangmere Museum for 2025. There'll be more visits from me throughout the calendar year, only for whenever chance allows for me.